In this video, I will show you how to read a detailed trace in MainView for DB2 version 12.1. However, the process is the same in all supported versions.
You can view your trace when it is running, after it is complete, and even after you have purged the original trace request on the HT view, which is the history trace view. You should already have a detailed trace written to a TLDS. The data will now show up in history traces, so once you're in MainView for DB2, you can just type HT on the command line to see the traces that were written to datasets. Then hyperlink on the trace ID, which will take you to HT logs.
From HT logs, hyperlink on the value under number of records for this trace. This will take you to the view HTIQZ, which summarizes thread history data for the selected trace ID by 15-minute intervals and connection type. All of the headers in white are hyperlinkable fields. If you hyperlink on end time, you can see the summarization for the selected trace ID by 5-minute intervals. You can also get it down to 1-minute interval by hyperlinking on end time again if you choose to. The most common way to narrow down the data that you see is to hyperlink on thread query. You can see that there are 3 pages of parameters that can be specified. You can move your cursor to any field and press PF1 to get help. Most customers specify a start date, start time, and duration, along with authorization ID and/or plan, connection name, or correlation ID. These parameters allow you to narrow down to a more finite amount of data if needed. After specifying all the parameters you're interested in, press Enter and then PF3, which will take you to TRL track. However, if you do not want to use thread query, you can get to TRL track by hyperlinking on record count on the previous view. I have a very small trace, so I will not narrow mine down. An asterisk at the beginning of the plan name column indicates this is a parallel query or utility subtask. If you hyperlink on one of the end times that you want to see the detail for, this will take you to TRS track. On the summary trace view, you can PF8 to page down, or you can also hyperlink on the section locates to see additional detail. There are 4 sections that are only available when a detailed trace is run. If you specify SQL events, you can see SQL summary detail, which displays important statistics for each SQL statement, including totals and averages across all executions. When scans are specified for a detailed trace, there is a display of database summary, which is a summary of all scans by table space and index space. The next display is a summary of all lock and I/O activity by this application, shown by table space and index space. The lock data is available with any detailed trace. The I/O data is available only if you requested I/O events on the trace request, which can be expensive. You can use the Sort Summary section to evaluate the impact of sorting on the total thread elapsed time using the Sort Elapsed column. At the top of TRS track, since this is a detailed trace, the hyperlink to detailed trace is also highlighted. Hyperlinking on it takes you to D track. On D track, the level on the PARM line specifies the display level. By default, you see Level 2, which shows user request events and DB2 request events. Level 3 includes both of these plus DB2 processing events. To see the Level 3 detail, move your cursor down one line to the PARM line and change level equals 2 to level equals 3. You can hyperlink on any event to get more detail. As you can see, level equals 3 has a lot more data. Depending on the kind of threads you are capturing, you may see even more data. In the example, I hyperlinked on index scan, which takes you to a pop-up for index scan, which identifies the number of grouped scan entries, if any. In this example, 4 database pages are needed to be scanned to satisfy this request. When you go to level equals 3, you can see additional entries. If you hyperlink on SQL text, you can see the SQL text that is being executed. You can get a lot more information about using traces in the MainView for DB2 Getting Started Guide, Chapter 4, Tuning an Application with Trace. This concludes the video on how to read a detailed trace.